revised funding scheme, NSFAS, announced on its website recently that it will convert all funded students to a banking system. Now, beneficiaries have since raised concerns as it charges more interest than normal banks. Now, the scheme says that the new system was implemented to cater for the million students it now funds. However, many are concerned about the system's eligibility review for funding existing beneficiaries and questions its implementation halfway through the academic year. South African Union of Students spokesperson Asive Dlanjwa also joining us to weigh in on this conversation. Asive, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. It really is frustration brewing over this matter. It doesn't seem to make sense that the new banking system charges students more in banking fees than commercial banks. What's your take?
Good morning, Simpo, to you and to your viewers and also your listeners. I think we must start firstly by saying we are quite disappointed in the manner in which the scheme has rolled out this process. I must just clarify a few things. We were always in support of a direct payment system that would remove middlemen and that would ensure that our students are able to get their allowances on time and efficiently. However, a few issues have been, we were picked up with the new system. Number one, as you rightfully mentioned, is the issue of bank charges. Some of them are absolutely exorbitant and just absolutely ridiculous. And the principle which we had given to the scheme when they had engaged us towards the implementation of this program was that the students are currently receiving 1,650 rands for their food allowances. And we will not accept the students and we would not accept that the students receive anything less than that, because that even in itself is not sufficient for them to be able to meet their basic needs. And so some of these fintech companies have been charging them almost in excess of 140, 150, meaning that they've eroded even the very increase and increment that we had advocated for in the beginning of this year, which was a 10% increment on their allowances. So that is absolutely unacceptable. We are not going to accept it. The students are going to receive their allowances as and when they should. What we had given as an ultimatum of some sort to the state was that in the implementation of this program, the cost thereof must not be incurred by the student, but it must be incurred by the scheme in terms of their distribution, not by the student. Number two, some of the challenges we have picked up with this as a simple is that some of these companies once are very incompetent and have not been able to get to our students to be able to assist them to onboard and to be able to get onto the platform. We are still having thousands of students who have still not received their allowances up until today, because some of those companies are seemingly not having the capacity to get to the students to be able to onboard them. They are also have not been able to deliver almost 90% of the cards to the students so that they can be able to buy. And with the issues of transfer, the students having to transfer those monies to them, the costs have been absolutely exorbitant. So that has been another issue. We have also received information that some of these companies are in fact engaged in corrupt behavior. One of the reasons we wanted direct payment by NSFAS was because we wanted to root out also corruption, because through these middlemen, a lot of corruption was being facilitated. So these are some of the challenges which we have picked up as it pertains to the new payment system.
In fact, as you speak about the nature of the companies that are involved in the system, it's not the first time that the questions have been raised about the banking system. In fact, OUTA, the organization, also picked up some of the concerns that you're raising, saying that NSFAS has hired businesses without banking licenses or VAT registration, but these companies had initially applied saying that they are registered in this format. That in itself is a huge concern. So as you take stock of some of the challenges, what is your plan of action? What are you planning on doing?
We will be meeting with the department and NSFAS on Monday, which would be tomorrow morning, the leadership of the Department of Higher Education and NSFAS, where we'll deliberate on these issues. And we're hoping that we're going to be able to find an amicable solution to deal with them. But the students and the public can rest assured that it is something we will absolutely not rest up and until a point that the students are able to receive their allowances on time and efficiently, and that we root out corruption absolutely, and that also the students are not being charged what they should not be. Another second issue I think I must touch on while we're still speaking, is the issue of the students that have been defunded, the thousands of students that have been defunded by NSFAS, allegedly on the premise that they did not qualify for to be funded in the very first place, because apparently they did not meet, they are not within the minimum threshold of 350,000 per annum bracket. We are saying that it's absolute ludicrous, that we reject that in its absolute entirety, because the question is how in the very first place were the students funded for the scheme to realize 4 months into funding the students that the students should not have been funded, number one. Number two, there was absolutely no due and diligent process that was undertaken to establish who should have been funded and who should not have been funded, because I can tell you for a fact that I have had many students who have contacted me personally who have said, I grew up in an orphanage home. I have never seen my parents. I am told now that, when I applied, I was told by NSFAS to produce a letter from a social worker and evidence that, in fact, I grew up in an orphanage home. They have since done that. And then 4 months into the year, into the academic year, they have since been defunded, meaning that they will have no place to stay, nothing to eat, etc. So that is absolutely ludicrous that we rejected that, and we're saying all students that have been defunded by NSFAS must be put back on the system, and the necessary due diligence must be done. If students have been found to have been deliberately trying to defraud the state, that is simple. We have laws in the country, and we will try and ensure that justice prevails and that those students are taken up within the parameters of justice. However, what we will not accept is that a blanket approach and just all students who the scheme, for whatever reasons, feel that they do not are not qualified, that they're going to be defunded almost halfway into the year. That is absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah. In terms of accountability, have you had any communication with NSFAS? Have you heard some sort of response to some of these grievances?
It is a pity that some of the things we picked up on social media, however, upon picking them up, we did reach out to the leadership of the scheme in the form of from the CEO in his office and other executive members, including their CIOs. We have also since reached out to the board chairperson, Dr. Enes Khoza, and it is through, and we have also reached out to the Department of Higher Education. And to be quite honest with you, in our initial conversations, there did not seem to be any conclusive or concrete approach as to deal with these issues, which then subsequently I requested this meeting that we meet with them urgently so that we deal with these things. So we are really hopeful that when we meet with them tomorrow, we'll be able to finalize and deal with these issues no later than Wednesday. Because failure to do so, I can promise you, Simple, that when the schools are reopened, that those schools would have been as good as not reopened, because those universities will have to be shut down, because we will never accept a situation where the university or colleges are only accessible to those that can afford, whilst the poor, the working class and the dejected masses are languishing outside the gates of those institutions.
Just going back to the defunded students, are you at all, do you have any idea how many students we're talking about here?
To be quite honest with you, at this point, we have asked for that information. We have not been able to receive that information from the scheme. We are not aware, but we know that it is thousands of students, primarily based on the number of students that have reached out to us from across institutions in South Africa.
Minister Bladen Zemande, what role would you like to see him play in this regard? Because on the 5th of July, he sent out a message on Twitter acknowledging that there are numerous complaints around NSFAS and that the NSFAS is working towards having a media engagement session soon. The time is still, an imperative part of this process. How soon would you like to see this meeting? And are you giving any sort of time frame to perhaps make a decision on your next move?
Number one, on the role that would like the minister to play, consistent with every time I have been here on your platform, I have said on behalf of the union that we would like the minister to take leadership of the sector. We would like him to abandon his laissez-faire and his godfather approach to the sector. We would like the minister to take charge and leadership of the sector. The things that are happening, we have long said that NSFAS is not an independent entity of the department. It is under the tutelage of the department. All these things which we are raising, we have said to the minister, Minister, take charge of the sector. Do not allow the sector to collapse into an imminent crisis and then you intervene. The issues that we are raising with you, we have raised it to the department several times, months before, and almost proverbially like prophets, we prophesied that the sector in the next few months will most probably catapult into a crisis, because these things need to be dealt with. There is absolutely nothing that right now is proving itself to be a crisis which were not flagged months before and said these things are a recipe for the disaster as far as the sector is concerned. So we would like the minister to take leadership of the sector, bring about accountability where it lags, and ensure that he coordinates the sector. Another issue which we are having, for which I did not mention, we also have institutions that are pulling in different directions, and there is a cold war that is happening between NSFAS and institutions, where at times even data of students has been withheld by institutions, so it does not get to NSFAS and all of those things. So what is happening here is a cold war that is happening between entities of the department, and the department is doing nothing about them. There's been no accountability also for institutions that have sat on data of students and not submitted it to NSFAS and the students, for them not to be able to receive their allowances, etc. So the sector is in a crisis. We're hoping that the minister is going to realize that he is not a godfather of the sector, but he is actually the minister in the sector. So obviously the meeting, we have already agreed, for the second part of your question, that we are going to meet tomorrow. We are hoping we will resolve failure, which we will communicate to the public. You will notice that we have been a little bit cautious in terms of our communication with the public up until we know conclusively what is happening. So once we meet with them tomorrow, we will issue a statement whether we're able to agree on solutions or not. Failure, which unfortunately we will then have to take them head on.
Absolutely. Very well. Thank you so much for your time. Let's perhaps leave it there for now.